all of those worlds that I have studied and worked on together in one big umbrella related to this important anniversary. So we're not a huge group, so I'd love if we could just start with maybe just very brief introductions so we know who's in the room, the teams room. Thank you for all managing teams as well. Maybe I'll just call out names and folks can say your name, if you're with an organization or a school, what your role is there, and pronouns. So I'm Susan McClure. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of the Arts Council. Jonah, do you want to? Oh, and I'm a commission. Whoa, I have so many things to say. I'm a commissioner on the 250th Anniversary Commission, and I'm the chair of the Commission's Research and Historical Committee also. Jonah, you have an equally long list of titles, so why don't you go next?
Sure. I'm Jonah Spivak. I'm also on the Vermont 250th Commission, and I also serve on the Vermont Teacher and Education Outreach Team. I'm also the chair of the Bennington 250th Regional Planning Effort, and I sit on a multi-state collaborative 250th Planners Group as well, and I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome, thank you. Rich. Hey, Rich. It's so fun to see people I haven't seen in a while on this call, too. Hi, Rich. How are you?
Hey, good. Rich Strum. I'm the Director of Academic Programs at Fort Ticonderoga. I'm also a member of the Vermont 250th Education and Teacher Subcommittee. I never get the title correct. And I do a lot with teacher professional development, and you'll be hearing a little bit from me later on.
Great. Meg, Mallory.
Hello, everybody. My name is Meg Mallory. I'm from the Vermont Historical Society. I work as the outreach educator there, and I also sit on the 250th Educator and Teacher Committee.
Great. Chris Sheehan.
I'm Chris. I am a high school teacher at Twinfield Union School. I teach social studies, and I'm also on the teaching and outreach subcommittee of the 250th Commission. And my focus over the last couple of years as a 2023 Rowland Fellow has been civics and civic engagement in youth.
Izzy, do you want to go next? And can you also clarify what name I should use for you? Because I have heard both. Do you go by Izzy, Israel?
I'm very indifferent towards it.
Okay.
Usually if you call me Israel, it gets my attention more. But my name is Izzy Provancha. I am a Vermont 250th Commissioner. I am the historical interpreter / reenactor liaison. I am a high school social studies teacher here at Hartford High School in White River Junction. And I am the 250th Education Teacher Outreach Subcommittee Chair as well.
And if you don't have as many titles as all of these people do, you don't have to worry about that too. Any titles are welcome, but I've wanted a great list of people today too. Barb is off camera, so I don't know if you can join us, but Barb, do you want to introduce yourself?
I can. The only reason why I'm off camera is because this computer doesn't have a good working camera. So I'm here. I'm Barb Giffen, and I'm president. Hi, how's it going, Jonah and Izzy? I'm president of the Rutland Historical Society. I'm also the DAR state historian. And I'm also on one of the America 250 research committees.
Great. Bill Holland. Oh, sorry, Barb. Bill Holland.
I'm a humble writer and lecturer who also serves on various Bennington 250th committees with Jonah.
Great, thanks, Bill. Martha.
Hi, Martha Dice from the Agency of Education. I'm the Global Citizenship Specialist, where I oversee social studies, world language, and financial literacy. And I am the Vice Chair of the Education and Outreach Subcommittee.
Great, thanks. Sarah.
I'm Sarah Rooker. I direct the North Historical Society and the Flow of History.
Great. Megan Hill.
Hi, I'm Megan. I am the Education Programs Manager at the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum.
Great, Andrew.
I'm Andrew McKeever. I'm also on the Bennington County 250 Commemoration Committee. I'm from the town of Sunderland, and I'm also news director at GNAT TV, one of the community access centers around the state.
Thanks, Andrew. Great to see you. Gwen. Oh, Gwen, I think.
Hi. Yep. Hi, I'm Gwen Tucson. I'm the chairperson for the Hartford Historical Society's 250th. And I guess the Upper Valley is quite well represented here today.
Great. Thanks, Gwen. Glad you could be here. And Colin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Colin Igo. I'm the head of school at Long Trail School in Dorset, Vermont.
Hey, nice to meet you. And Megan, do you want to introduce yourself too, as you're the behind the scenes person who made this all happen?
Sure, yes, I'm definitely behind the scenes because somehow my camera is not working, unfortunately, with Teams today. Sorry about that. I'm the Vermont 250th Anniversary Commission event coordinator, and I'll be helping administrate the webinar today.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So today, really, we're going to give just a brief overview of kind of framing the 250th Commission's work, where we're starting from in this work, what we're looking to do across the state. Then you'll hear a bit from the Education and Teacher Resources Committee as well on what they're working on. And then really this is the chance for all of us to connect as well, to learn from each other and hear what everyone is working on, because there's already so many great things happening as we come up on these very important anniversaries, which everyone says 1776, but actually we're starting in 1775, and before that even anniversaries have happened. So our focus is going to be on 1775 to 1777. We'll talk about that a little here. So let me oh no, sorry. You don't need to see that. Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen in Teams, which is something you would think I would be able to do by now in the world. Okay, let's see if this works. Nope, that's not it. There we go. Nope, I just pressed the wrong button. Okay, can folks see this slide of a beautiful lake? Okay, great. I'm trying to resize things. Okay. So I'll just start with a land acknowledgement. The 250th Commission really wishes to acknowledge that in Vermont, we're in the unceded territory of the original inhabitants of Indakana, the Abenaki, and in the southwest portion, the Mohican people. Their traditional and ongoing relationship with the land calls us to learn to be better caretakers of the land ourselves. And we offer respect to their ancestors, their elders, and their relations, past, present, and emerging. We recognize and wish to honor the responsibility that accompanies this acknowledgement of these relationships. Okay, you've all disappeared. So hold on, I can't see you, but if you have anything to say, just chime in and I'll just go through the slides. So 2026 will mark 250 years since 1776, a pivotal moment in a larger historical era that included the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the outbreak of the American Revolution, and the creation of the political foundations of the United States. The years between 1775 and 1777 were really a watershed turning point that built upon what came before and set the stage for much of what was to come for the next 250 years. So the question we're looking at the 250th Commission is really, how should Vermont commemorate this important period in our history? And when we say the word commemoration, what does it mean to commemorate something? By definition, to commemorate is a call to remembrance, or to mark an event, or by ceremony or an observance. And we choose the word commemorate because it represents the wide range of ways in which diverse groups might choose to remember this anniversary. Historical anniversaries really give us an opportunity to imagine a better world by drawing on the reverence, the pain, and the hope of our collective history. And it is totally okay that people and groups will commemorate this anniversary in different ways. History is complicated, as all of us who work in it know. Learning about our history requires grappling with perspectives that might change what we think we know about the past. As historians do their work, they look at a wide range of evidence. They also examine the ways in which a host of factors, such as class, race, gender, religion, sexuality, all affect how historical events were experienced and understood by people in the past. In the same way that history is for everyone, commemoration is also for everyone. So Vermont's 250th Anniversary Commission was created in 2020 to plan, coordinate, and promote observances and programming that commemorate this key moment in our nation's history. The Commission aims to inspire all Vermonters to learn from our collective past in building stronger communities for the future. And we really want to help you think about how your community, historic site, museum, historical society, classroom, school might commemorate the anniversary in a way that feels right to you. So the Commission will highlight a few themes during the commemoration to help us think big about our past and the world today. We're going to be looking at, forming identities. Really asking about how Vermont and Vermonters form their identities during this time period. The signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776 created a Confederation of American States with a new independent American identity. At the same time, Vermont was forming its own unique identity, including the formation of the Vermont Republic, which existed from 1777 to 1791. We'll examine what conflict and struggle looked like right here in Vermont, what is now Vermont. Vermonters were deeply engaged in struggles that marked the American Revolution, both in their daily lives as well as in the larger political, social, and military events that defined this time period. There was also a tremendous diversity of experience during the time period. Many people in what is today Vermont found themselves caught in this tumultuous and historic moment. Their responses were different depending on their race, religion, class, and gender. The state's commemoration of the 250th anniversary seeks to give voice to the different ways in which Vermonters experienced this time period. And this time period has created a tremendous legacy over the past 250 years. The creation of the United States as a nation was an earth-shaking historical event. For many, the revolution was full of unfinished promises, setting the stage for battles to come over the next 250 years. The events and actions of this era really laid the foundations of the country that we all share today. And many of us have a basic, and many of us being not probably the people on this webinar, but many of us in the world, we'll say, have a basic familiarity with the general narrative of the period that goes a little something like, in 1776, the original 13 colonies separated from Great Britain by signing the Declaration of Independence. This led to the American Revolutionary War, the founding of the United States as an independent country, and the great American experiment of representative democracy. And while none of that is technically incorrect, as we all know in the conversations you are all leading with students and in your organizations, there is so much more to that story. And the state that is now Vermont was a key part in all of it. The truth is that the American population was decidedly split on the issue of independence. In the constantly shifting realities of the revolution, individuals were forced to make choices for themselves that sometimes defied neat categorization, especially in the contested space of Vermont. And it wasn't just politicians and soldiers who conducted the revolution. Ordinary people contributed through their everyday actions while facing the reality of war. People of all races, classes, and genders participated, fighting for a range of causes. While some exerted their rights, others, including enslaved people and indigenous peoples, had their rights diminished or erased. And no one knew how the conflict would end as it was happening. And like many states, Vermont's story does not begin or end with the Declaration of Independence in 1776. In fact, Vermont, as we all know, was not even a British colony leading up to the Revolutionary War. Instead, it was land that had been and continued to be inhabited by indigenous people while also being contested by both New Hampshire and New York. British colonial settlers started moving to Vermont in large numbers in the 1760s. Most settlers purchased land titles from New Hampshire to what they believed were the very western borders of New Hampshire. When New York won the legal claim to the land, however, these people automatically became residents of New York. And while some Vermont residents were happy to pay New York's fees, others staged protests, some of them violent. A volunteer militia was formed called the Green Mountain Boys, which was instrumental in the resistance to New York's attempts to control the territory. So this time that we're commemorating was a highly controversial time that resulted in a politically strong contingent of Vermont declaring its independence from New York in 1777, calling itself the Independent Vermont Republic. The Vermont Republic sent representatives to both the United States Congress and to British Canada to negotiate terms of admittance. And then Vermont ended up joining the United States as the 14th state in 1791. Lived experiences at the time varied drastically by gender, race, religion, and class. Women exerted political power, not always in the traditional realm of politics, but through their everyday actions. With the men at war, women's roles in farming and housekeeping expanded. They fed armies and exercised purchasing power in line with popular boycotts. And some upper-class women even had opportunities for fundraising and petitioning. The revolution also meant something different for Blacks. The institution of slavery was found throughout the colonies, and many enslaved Blacks hoped to seize their freedom by fleeing or joining the British Army. White fears of rebellion tightened control on the slave system, while the military demands of war opened up new opportunities for military service and personal liberty. And enslaved people asserted control through their everyday resistance. Some northern colonies and states sought to embody new ideals of individual freedom and independence by enshrining gradual emancipation in their state constitution, including Vermont. When delegates of the old Constitution House in Windsor declared Vermont as an independent republic in 1777, they sought to gradually emancipate enslaved people when they reached a certain age. However, like many other free states, vague wording and power dynamics ensured that slavery persisted in Vermont. Even those who did gain freedom from slavery found that they were never totally free, facing discrimination and an inability to exercise full rights. The American Revolution also tore at the fabric of Indigenous life. It continued a nearly two-century trajectory associated with European trade and colonization of altering long-standing alliances and political structures. The revolution forced Indigenous people, as much as any others, to make consequential choices about their future within a conflict they had not begun. Many died because of the conflict and its indirect impacts. Others were forced to relocate. However, Native people and cultures persisted throughout the trauma of the revolution and during the following 250 years of marginalization. Today, Native communities and people continue to live as thriving Indigenous cultures here in Vermont. The creation of the United States in 1776 was an earth-shaking historical event. For the first time in centuries, a new nation was created based on the profound assertion of the equality of humankind. For many, the revolution was full of unfinished promises, setting the stage for battles to come over the next 250 years. Many in the United States continue to aspire to the ideals established during the revolution. The events and actions of this era that we're commemorating laid the foundations of the country we share today. And it was everyday people from a range of backgrounds who shaped what happened during these important years. By considering the ordinary and extraordinary lived experiences of a diverse range of people in revolutionary America, we gain a fuller understanding of the nation we have become and what continues to both unite and divide those who identify as Americans. The 250th Anniversary Commission really builds on the work of Vermonters who remembered the American Revolution throughout many moments in the history of our nation and our state. We continue to learn from how these anniversaries were commemorated, identifying who was included and what stories were not shared. Looking at these past anniversaries and our evolving history help us to understand who we are as a nation, sparking several important questions for us to consider, including, what does it mean to identify as an American or as a Vermonter? What can we learn from these diverse experiences of revolutionary Americans? And how does the change-making and revolutionary spirit of the revolution travel through us in this century and up to this 250 years that we're commemorating now? So the Vermont 250th Anniversary Commission has a website, which I will, actually, let me go to this and just say a quick thank you to all the folks who helped us with images. And then I'll stop sharing so I can bring you all back to looking at me. Okay. Okay. So the Vermont 250th Anniversary Commission has a website. I had meant to casually put the link in the chat, which I will do as soon as I can't type and talk at the same time. I'm not that multi-talented. But the commission and the website is really focused on working in 3 ways, providing opportunities for folks to engage. The first is that the website will include a events calendar where you can list your 250th related events and programs. We're also including a list of resources and grant funding available from federal, state, local, and private. Megan, of course you got it. Thank you. The website is live as of, was that Friday, Monday, whatever it was. We're very excited. Congratulations to Megan for working on that. The website also includes information on resources and grants available from federal, local, state, and private funders to support your work related to the 250th. And we're providing some background materials that'll tell the story of the complex events we're commemorating. The Anniversary Commission really looks forward to exploring these ideas together with all of you and all Vermonters as we head into this important anniversary. And we wanted to start with this just very broad overview of all that we're talking about to really encourage folks in their thinking of their own work, encourage folks to think about how broad this commemoration really can be and how the 250th Commission really wants to support what you all are doing in your classrooms and your organizations to really make this historical anniversary real and meaningful for the students that you all work with. So I'm going to turn it over to someone on the committee, I think Izzy, who's going to talk about the work of the committee. And then after we're done, after the committee's wrapped up, we'll have time for questions and discussion together.
Thanks, Susan. So I'm just going to, we already kind of skipped the introductions, but my name is Izzy Provancha, and I'm the chair of the Education Subcommittee. And so we just want to kind of talk to you about, well, first of all, thank you all for taking the time today to meet with us and listen to our presentation. We appreciate that very much, and hopefully spread the word. So we will have a little presentation that kind of goes through different areas of things that we have been doing as a committee. And with that, I'm going to kick it off to Jonah.
Megan, could you queue up that PowerPoint for us? And my apologies, 2 PowerPoints in a row. Hang in there, people. Megan, are you with us? Can you bring that up? Awesome. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us to learn more about the upcoming 250th anniversaries and how that can be important and used in the classroom. As I said before, my name is Jonah Spivak, and actually the one title I didn't mention before, my day job is I'm the communications coordinator for the town of Bennington, and I'm grateful to them for getting some skin in the game to let me do this work as part of my role. Now, you are here today because you know we'll be talking about the 250th anniversaries, but more importantly, why should you care? The 250th is an opportunity for us all to use this anniversary to enhance the educational experience of our students, to build pride of place, to build civic engagement, to celebrate Vermont's unique history, and most importantly, to engage the next generation of citizens so that they are prepared to continue this work into the future. Meg, can you hit the next slide? Oh, yeah, next slide, please. So for the 250th, as Susan said, we're not just commemorating 1 year, we're commemorating 3 years. And that's really important. Like most states in New England, our story is not just about the 2026 semi-quincentennial of the Declaration of Independence. Our anniversary years will start in 2025 in just a couple short months and not end until 2027, although you could even argue there's some reason to go even beyond that. Our big start is 2025 because this is Vermont's moment on the national stage with the capture of Fort Ticonderoga by Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys, the first victory of the American Revolution. Then, along with the rest of the country, we will, of course, be commemorating the Declaration of Independence, and we want to take advantage of the excitement in 2026 to propel us to 2027, Vermont's signature anniversary year, commemorating the key Revolutionary War battles of Hubbardton and Bennington and the founding of Vermont, a fully independent republic for 14 years before joining the U.S. as the 14th state. Next slide. If you are a person of color or a member of a First Nation, the creation of the United States was not necessarily a cause for celebration. It's important that we use the 250th as an opportunity for reflection. Rather than thinking of America 250 years ago as an origin story limited to a small group of founders representing a specific race and class, let's instead consider it an inflection point in the story of a nation struggling to become the nation we hope to be and are still becoming. Next slide. We can do this by using our shared stories to teach the broader themes. The fact is, we have amazing stories to tell. Our state was born in the crucible of the Revolutionary War, and we played a major role. Vermont's Constitution was the first on the North American continent, a full 10 years before the US Constitution was even written. And the independent republic that was formed remained independent for 14 years before joining the rest of the US. Our story is more diverse than commonly known and can unite us. We can use these anniversaries to shine a spotlight on these stories and increase civic awareness. Next slide. So, engaging today's youth is a key part of what we can do today to ensure a strong future. When the Declaration of Independence was signed, Thomas Jefferson, the old guy, was only 33. James Madison was 25. Alexander Hamilton was 21. James Monroe, who would later become president, was still a teenager at age 18. The 250th is an opportunity for educators to use the excitement and interest around the anniversary to explore historical themes through a local lens. What can that look like in your school and community? What can we be doing to empower youth at every stage of their education? Next slide. So as many of you may know, or maybe you don't know, Vermont does not have a unified curriculum for educating students. That is why outreach to teachers, such as we have been doing for the last few years, is essential. Our goal is to inspire every supervisory union and every school and every teacher to think about and begin using 250th themes as part of their teaching. To do that, we will need the help of teachers in the front lines doing the daily work of teaching history. We need history teachers to be our influencers in your schools. Where do you see yourself in this effort? How can your passion and expertise contribute? And with that thought, I'll now turn over the next portion of this presentation to the chair of our Vermont 250th Education and Teacher Outreach Committee, Izzy. Back to you.
Thanks, Jonah. We can go to the next slide, Megan. So Susan already did a really nice job of introducing the two Vermont 250th themes. And within the context of the classroom, they are broad in the sense that it allows teachers to some wiggle room. As some of you probably no doubt know, to be encompassing and broad allows for some flexibility as opposed to like a canned curriculum. So I'm not going to go through, I'm not going to read these all again because I really think that Susan did a great job of kind of describing them in great detail. But the idea of these is a way in which to think about the revolution and how it affects Vermont and Vermonters of all stripes, and how those could be potentially used as either essential questions or just broad thematic transferred into enduring understandings by looking at those questions. So a framework from which to start from. And I am going to now move on to Chris, who is a Rowland Fellow. Go ahead, Chris.
All right. Megan, if you want to go to the next slide, I think that's where I start. Yeah, so I've spent the last year and a half focusing a lot on civic engagement in the classroom. I noticed that my students were not as willing to engage in the sort of conversations that make a democracy vibrant and successful. So I've been traveling around, researching ways, trying to figure out how to get kids more engaged. And I think the 250th anniversary is a great moment for us to use to increase that civic engagement. So I'll talk about how, if we go to the next slide. We need to sound the alarm. These are, you can just kind of click through as these go. The United States is considered a flawed democracy, ranked 30th in the world between Israel and Slovenia. Now, those numbers may have changed over the last year or so, but the point is that we are, 250 years after the Declaration of Independence, which set us up to be this, shining city on a hill for the world to see, and for us to create the purest form of democracy that existed on the planet. And now we have let some of those ideals slip. And I think if anybody has that same sort of pit in their stomach right now, which has been growing for the last few months and seems like it will come to a crescendo maybe 1 week from today, I think it sort of says something about how we're viewing our democracy, and how can we change the way we're approaching politics, the way we're approaching civics, from something that makes us nervous into something that we can celebrate as we should. So next slide. It's not hard to see why these things have happened. Social media is creating all of these echo chambers, so we're not getting a variety of voices. We're seeing challenges to the ballot box that we haven't seen in generations. People are, if they agree on anything, it's that they don't approve of Congress, they don't approve of the direction of public schools, and it just feels like we're more divided than ever. These are for social reasons, and they're for structural reasons as well. So go ahead to the next slide. Our common purpose is a document produced by the Academy of Arts and Sciences, and the primary author of this was Danielle Allen, who is a professor of history at Harvard. And in our common purpose, which lays the groundwork for changes that we should consider making as a country to get back to our roots of freedom for all and equality and democracy. But one of the things that she points out is that the 250th is a great time to engage communities in these conversations. And direct, open-ended, and inclusive conversations are in Vermont's DNA. I think among all of the places that are celebrating the 250th, we're in an exceptionally good spot to remember what it's like to engage communities in this sort of direct, open-ended, and inclusive conversation. So that leads me to my next slide. Some of the things that I've learned about how to do this. There should be one more slide. There should be another slide after this. Yeah. What is our role as educators of civics? And what I've realized is that we need to do more than just teach the structure. I used How a Bill Becomes a Law as sort of a stand-in for that sort of rote civics education a lot of us received when we were younger. That's sort of memorize how these things work and then recite it onto a test, and then maybe you can pass the citizenship test and then immediately forget all those things. I consider democracy to be more of an action, something that we should be engaged in, something that we should be doing. You can click through these bullet points, and that's where we're becoming better and better at applying democratic principles in our kids and actually get them to go out and do democracy. And Vermont is so great for that. Here we are, a state that has town meetings, the most direct form of democracy that still exists. The years we spent as an independent republic, it's sort of in our DNA to go local. So that's why I want to focus during the 250th, even though it's a national celebration, If we teach kids to focus on local, that's where a lot of the really important and authentic sort of work and experience lies. So when you are talking to your kids or you're talking to educators about how to get kids involved, it feels so much more authentic and real to them to go to their city council or their select board or their town clerk and talk about the real needs that they see in their community and that they can have a direct impact on. We have amazing historical societies and museums that are so anxious to work with schools. And when working with these, they've become so much better at not doing the sort of guided tour, let's walk and listen to somebody talk, but instead sort of engaging kids. And all history should be a civics lesson. Why are we learning history if not to make our democracy stronger and prepare people to bring our country into the future? This is a participatory game we're playing in here. Everybody's got to be part of our democracy if we're going to continue to be successful as a country. And we also need to acknowledge our mistakes. I mean, we have to move on from the sort of rah history that many of us were taught, patriotism for the sake of patriotism. And it's so much more interesting and authentic to engage in the tensions that existed all throughout. Some of them we've already heard about today. And students know when you're giving them the real story. And our real story involves mistakes. And it's mistakes we can learn from and get better as we go. So, is there another slide? There's some great resources that you can use. Many of these resources are free, but they provide frameworks for doing civic action projects. So civic action projects are, again, moving beyond the regular classroom, beyond tests and note-taking, and getting kids involved in their communities. Finding issues, finding the root causes of those issues, and then learning about the structures of government, the structures of power in order to solve those issues. So teaching a student in my classroom, if I give a PowerPoint about the way that laws are made in the state of Vermont, well, my kids are gonna glaze over. I mean, it's not interesting in the abstract. But if I get my kids to see an issue like homelessness in our community and think, all right, well, how are we going to help the root problems of homelessness? Or, what little thing can we do? Now they want to know how government works. Now they want to know how the structure of power works so that they can get their hands dirty and get in there and do some democracy. I mean, that's what, the folks in Vermont in the 18th century were not, debating things on a national level. They were solving problems local to themselves. And I think we need to return to that in our civics education to get kids re-engaged and feeling more empathy for their community and more empathy for themselves. And next slide. So there's some great resources for teachers, which Meg Mallory from the Vermont Historical Society is going to be happy to talk to you about.
Thanks, Chris. I also just want to give a shout out to Sarah Rooker, who's here amongst this group, because she is associated with Flow of History, and they have incredible resources for teachers too, especially when we're talking about a more inclusive history and some of this truth telling that we're looking to do now.
Can I chime in for 1 second, Meg? Because I'm so excited that Sarah's here, because I want you to know, Sarah, that even though I haven't been to any of your workshops, the word spreads. And in our school, when people say Vermont banned slavery, we're the first ones to put it in our Constitution. There's always somebody who says, except for people under the age of 18. And your word is getting around. And so we thank you for that.
I just wanted to hop in. I wanted to start with just our Vermont History Explorer website and highlight that it was first designed to be a student-facing website, and information is sort of broken out into tabbed categories, but we've added a couple of new tabs in the last year. One of them being the Vermont 250th tab. And it is currently a page that's dedicated to this revolutionary era. It's meant to sort of act as a hub of information, and it begins with some of the American Association for State and Local History 250th themes, which are slightly different. And it also is using student-friendly language. The site in general is geared towards a 5th grade reading level. And it also has resources listed like historic sites and rentable history kits. Yes, from the Vermont Historical Society, but also from other organizations all over the state. It has a curated list of this place in history videos, which are short form videos, bite-sized, good for classrooms, that describe specific people and places and events in Vermont that relate to the Revolutionary era. And then also there's this little all-in project that I'm going to go into a little bit more detail later. So those will continue to grow. And I also just wanted to highlight the educator resource tab also, which is a drop-down menu that has field trip scheduling. And it also will have teacher workshop offerings. We have 2 that are Vermont History Day related coming up, one in December and one in January. Both of those act as sort of introductions. One will be at the Vermont Association for the Social Studies annual conference that's coming up. And then also that we're going to offer a Teacher Institute in August. So next slide, please, Megan. So this is Vermont History Day. So many of you are familiar with it already, but the Vermont Historical Society became an affiliate in 1983. And Chris, like you're saying, it's sort of more of it champions student investment because it focuses on student choice and voice. And though it's called Vermont History Day, and though we always encourage the study of Vermont history, it doesn't have to exclusively be about Vermont history. So it's available for students in grades 5 through 12. And next year we'll have an emphasis on the 250th in particular. And we're really hoping that students wrestle with some of the complexities of the time period as they examine history through that lens. And I think that there's an opportunity to, there's different pathways. So you don't have to compete in the actual state contest if you don't want to. It can just be more of a general research program or opportunity within a classroom. And so we're looking forward to that. If you'd like to go to the next slide. And then this is a project that I'm really excited about. If you would rather focus students specifically towards local history, the All in Vermont Put Your History on the Map project may be a better fit. It is generously funded by the Champlain Valley National Heritage Partnership, and it is going to be a project that calls for all students to study Vermont's inhabitants, notable events, industries, movements, and the state's continued evolution since the revolution. And we have a couple people here that may be involved. Our goal is to have all 252 towns and cities represented on a searchable map by the end of 2026. And soon there will be an educator guide that will be developed with a framework that will have research guides broken out into different grade bands, including elementary, and it will have sample projects and timelines. It will be standards aligned and will include rubric examples too. And then best of all, there will be a local historical society guide that is being developed simultaneously with the hopes that both local historians and educators can support student learning with greater intentionality and consideration of the project's overall mission. And so that is going to be updated under the Vermont 250th tab on the Vermont History Explorer website. And then the last slide, I just wanted to jump in and mention this because this is exciting for us. We just opened the Research and Exhibition Gallery, also known as the REG, over here at the Vermont History Center in Barrie. And as some of you know, the Vermont Historical Society's collection is expansive with over 30,000 objects. And many of these objects are sort of tucked away safely in storage. And so this REG gives us an opportunity for the public to view many of these precious historical artifacts. And all of these objects and archives that are currently on display now are tied to the 250th themes: Power of Place, We the People, Unfinished Revolutions, and the American Experiment. And so students can visit the Reg for free. We just ask that any visits are scheduled in advance, just to ensure that we have proper staff. And I also want to plug that we have the Leahy Archival Library that's just upstairs. So there's ways to link these two resources together for students. So now I'm going to pass it over to Rich Strum from Fort Ticonderoga. He's the Director of Educational Programs, Academic Programs.
Thank you, Megan. Meg, actually, this is Jonah that's before me.
Yeah, so I'm going to insert myself in here just briefly. This is an example of what an effort around using the 250th as an educational lens can look like in your area. We had a couple of teachers step up as influencers in southwestern Vermont, and they engaged in a pretty extraordinary effort to bring the 250th into all the schools in the Southwestern Vermont Supervisory Union. They created a poster, the one you see on the image here. This was a painting by Leroy Williams. They secured funding through the SVSU. They got the support, more importantly, of the SVSU. And then they developed educational resources to help interpret the poster applicable for every grade level, K through 12. They also did an intro video to let people know what they were doing around the 250th for other educators, and that led right into them building a task force membership of something like upwards of a dozen educators, not just from the SVSU, but also other schools in the region. And by the way, Colin, I have Long Trail School on my radar, so I'll be reaching out to you about this as well. And one of my favorite things is they established a history club in their school. And the next thing they did was they wanted to not just focus on the 250th at fourth grade and seventh grade and 10th grade. They really wanted every grade cohort to be able to do something. So they developed a curriculum K through 12. And Megan, if you go to the next slide, they came up with an activity that could be done by every grade. And this year, it had its first year last year, and it's getting even more focused this year. This year, Meg, you'll be happy to hear they're even tying it to the April history event. So I think the Monday after when Vermont History Day happens, that's the day that every student in southwestern Vermont and other participating schools will do something around the 250th. So just a little quick segue to give a real live example of how teacher influencers and school districts are implementing this idea right now. So next slide, and over to Rich.
Thank you, John. I just wanted to really quickly talk about some professional development opportunities for teachers. One is Fort Ticonderoga has a free teacher webinar series called Ticonderoga Tuesdays. And our next one on Tuesday, February 4th, we'll be highlighting resources around the 250th available for teachers. And it'll be highlighting organizations in both Vermont and New York. We've got the Maritime Museum, the Vermont Historical Society, the New York State Archives, Saratoga National Historical Park have all already agreed to be part of that. I also wanted to mention that there are opportunities for teachers to spend a whole week at Fort Ticonderoga next summer. We've been talking a lot about 250th themes, and Fort Ticonderoga has its own set of 5 themes, and it works out really well when you have a week-long program that each day can be dedicated to one of those themes. And our Monday theme is Power of Place, which is why a lot of us are, as historical organizations, are where we are and exist, is because of the importance of the place where we are. We have a Landmarks of American History and Culture workshops grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. We'll be running the same program twice, once in late June, once in late July, for 36 teachers from around the country. Applications will go live on November 15th for that. They tend to be pretty competitive. Fort Ticonderoga will also host its own Fort Ticonderoga Teacher Institute in the middle of July. All of these programs start on Sunday and run through Friday. All of them are through an application process. And the applications for the Teacher Institute will also go live in the middle of November. If you switch to the next slide, Megan, because I need the next. I've also been asked to talk a bit about Vermont State Historic Sites and their programs. Bennington Battle Monument, the Calvin Coolidge Homestead, the Chimney Point, President Chester A. Arthur site, Hubbardton Battlefield, the Justin Morrill Homestead, and Mount Independence all have programs for educators and for students. And just go to the website that's shown here, historicsites.vermont.gov, to learn more information about those individual programs at each of those sites. And I forget who I'm passing it on to. So next slide.
So this is really a combined, we're looking to Chris and Izzy and others to just sort of lead a discussion, and Susan, of course.
Yeah, so at this point, we want to hear from you. What are you thinking? What do you need? What are your hopes? How can we support? So if there's any questions for the public, we'd love to hear some. Or was our presentation so compelling and so spot on that there's no need for questions?
Maybe we should go back to the gallery view for this portion.
Yeah,
just a
sure.
suggestion.
And also, if you'd prefer to give some feedback or ask questions privately, you can use your camera on this QR code and leave us feedback.
Or ask questions in the chat.
What discussions are going on about Vermont as an indigenous world and the relationships between Native peoples and whites during this time period?
Anybody
I think that's
want to?
something. Oh, sorry. Does anyone want to take that? I'll say I think that is something. So the interesting thing about the role of the 250th Commission is our role is actually supporting organizations that are doing work. The role of the commission is not to produce our own programs, not to produce our own specific content. We're supporting the organizations that are doing that work. So a lot of the intent of the today and the other webinars we're doing is for you all to learn about what other organizations are doing and know who to connect with and contact. I will say Ethan Allen Homestead Museum has done a lot of work around Indigenous life during the Revolutionary time period, including looking at some of the relations between Ethan Allen and Indigenous people. So that would be a good resource, I think, for that. As our local go-to one. I know the National Museum of the American Indian also has some good resources on their website that are to that, and some of them are directly curricula for schools, and some of them are just kind of context related too. And I'll actually put the link to their resources in the chat because they're great.
As part of the reg, we just have plenty of new artifacts that have arrived on loan. And I think that there is some discussion about potentially offering some workshops in and around those artifacts beginning next year, led by the Indigenous community themselves.
At the VAST conference in December, we do have a session. I think it's teacher-led with somebody that's in the field regarding the Abenaki. And I know that Jeff Benet at Missisquoi had been working on a curriculum. I don't know how far that has gotten. I haven't heard from him in a little while, but that's all I know from the agency's standpoint.
Any other questions?
Okay, well, we've dropped a lot of information at you today. So please take some time to think about it, stay connected. There is our social media accounts for the 250th now to follow. I believe it's at Vermont 250. So you can check that out. If you are doing events or programs, we are one of the main kind of purposes of the statewide commission is really to gather all of the many things that are happening around the state. We'll be working with the Department of Tourism to share that with them and make sure that it's all as centralized as possible. Even in a small state, we know that centralized calendars are like the hardest thing we could ever do. Thanks, Megan. Yes, Instagram and Facebook. And I was going to say stay connected, but I don't know how that's going to happen because that's not my role in this. But there will be ways to be connected as we move forward. And if you have, Megan, can you put your email in the chat? Megan's a good central point for the committee. Maybe she just did that. I can do that real quickly. Megan's is the best. Oh, there we go. Thanks, Megan. Megan's contact is the best kind of central contact for the commission. If you have questions for the commission or want to reach us or do anything, and you'll be seeing more about the way we're our work over the next, as we head forward, as Jonah said, 1775, we're getting going with one of my personal favorite historical events, the taking of Fort Ticonderoga. And thank you all so much for spending an hour with us today and talking about this big, vast, complicated, messy, interesting, exciting opportunity to commemorate a really what is going to be a once in a lifetime event that we're all lucky to be living through in this way. Well, thanks everyone so much for joining today and look forward to seeing you all again at future events. And please stay in touch and enjoy your commemorating. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.